Lisa Martinez had been on her feet for 18 hours straight when the court summons appeared on her tablet. The emergency wing of the Frontier Medical Station orbiting Jupiter had been chaotic since the mining accident on Europa. As head trauma nurse for the station, she hadn't slept in nearly 36 hours, her blue medical scrubs stained with various fluids from 3 different species. The bright lights of the medical bay hurt her tired eyes as she checked the vital signs of a young miner with severe chest injuries. The man's breathing was finally stable after hours of touch-and-go surgery. Lisa allowed herself a small smile of relief before moving to the next bed, where an older woman lay unconscious, her skin pale against the white sheets. "How's she doing?" Lisa asked Dr. Sam Wright, who was reviewing the woman's brain scans. "Better than expected," he replied, pushing his glasses up his nose. "The swelling is going down. I think she'll make it." Lisa nodded and made a note on her tablet. Just then, it beeped with an incoming message. She tapped the screen and frowned at what she saw. The summons was urgent, an appearance before the Galactic Court of Justice regarding the quarantine procedures she had implemented during the recent Novaran plague outbreak. The Novarans, a silicon-based species from beyond the Kuiper Belt, had filed a formal complaint alleging human prejudice in treatment protocols. "You gotta be kidding me," she muttered, scanning the document. "Required appearance in 6 hours." Her colleague, Nurse Alan Winters, glanced over her shoulder. He was a tall man with kind eyes that now widened with concern. "The GCJ doesn't mess around," he said. "You should probably clean up and get going." Lisa shook her head. "No time. The Europa victims still need stabilization, and I'm the only one certified on xenotrauma for ice moon injuries." She looked around the medical bay at the 27 patients still under her care. Most were humans and Arcturians from the mining colony, but 3 were Novarans, their crystalline bodies carefully placed in special beds that maintained their unique biological needs. The irony wasn't lost on her, being accused of prejudice against the very species she was currently treating with such care. The station's chief medical officer, Dr. Patricia Goodman, approached with concern etched across her face. She was in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, her white coat perfectly pressed despite the chaos around them. "Lisa, you need to go," Dr. Goodman insisted. "This is serious, the first time a human medical professional has been called before the Galactic Court. Our relations with the Novarans are already strained." "But the patients will manage," Dr. Goodman said. "The hospital legal team will meet you at the transit hub. This isn't just about you. How the court views your actions could affect human-alien medical protocols throughout the system." Lisa sighed and looked down at her patient list one more time. "Fine, but I need to check on the Novaran in bed 16 first. His crystal matrix was showing signs of fracture patterns an hour ago." She walked quickly to the isolation unit where the Novaran patients were being treated. Their bodies looked like human-sized sculptures made of blue-tinted crystal, with pulsing light patterns moving through them instead of blood. The one in bed 16, Engineer Krolvex, according to his chart, had been caught in the worst of the mining explosion. Lisa carefully checked his readings, making small adjustments to the matrix stabilizer attached to his main crystal core. The lights within his body pulsed a bit stronger after her adjustments. "There you go," she said softly, though she wasn't sure if he could hear her. Novaran sensory organs were still something of a mystery to human doctors. "Hang in there." A small section of his crystalline arm suddenly lit up, forming patterns that the translator next to the bed converted to words on a screen. "Thank you, nurse." Lisa smiled. "I'll be back as soon as I can. The team here will take good care of you while I'm gone." She spent another 15 minutes giving detailed instructions to the nurses who would cover her patients, particularly focusing on the special needs of the Novaran miners. Then she grabbed her medical tablet and hurried toward the transit bay. The station's corridors were busy with people rushing back and forth, medical staff, engineers trying to maintain the station's systems under the strain of so many emergency patients and family members of the injured waiting for news. Lisa pushed her way through, her mind racing with worry about both her patients and the coming court appearance. At the transit hub, she met with Howard Fields, the hospital's lead attorney. He was a serious man in his 40s with thinning hair and a perpetually worried expression that only deepened when he saw her. "Lisa, we have a shuttle waiting, but—" He stopped, looking her up and down with alarm. "You can't appear before the Galactic Court like that. I brought a formal suit for you." Lisa looked down at her scrubs, worn, stained with evidence of her tireless work. There was blue Arcturian blood on one sleeve, green fluids from a Centauran, patient on her pants, and the sparkling residue of Novaran structural fluid on her shoes. "There's no time to change," she said, checking her watch. "The court summons said 6 hours, and the journey takes almost 5. If I want to make the appointed time, we need to leave now." "But the court has strict protocols," Howard protested. "Judge Zixtar is notorious for his adherence to formal procedures. This could prejudice your case before you even speak." Lisa's tablet beeped with an alert. One of the Novaran patients, Krulvex, was experiencing fluctuations in his crystal matrix. She quickly typed instructions to the medical team about adjusting his stabilizer settings. "I need to keep monitoring my patients remotely during the journey," she said firmly. "And I need to get back as soon as possible. If Judge Zixtar has a problem with my appearance, then he can take it up with the 43 injured miners whose lives depend on our medical team." Howard looked like he wanted to argue further, but instead shook his head in resignation. "At least let me brief you on the court procedures during the journey. The Galactic Court of Justice has existed for 9,000 years and has some very specific traditions that humans find challenging." Lisa nodded as they boarded the small shuttle that would take them to the court. The vessel detached from the station and accelerated away from Jupiter, its engines humming as it gained speed. As the massive gas giant grew smaller behind them, Lisa stared out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was the Novaran, homeworld, a planet of crystal forests and silicon life forms so different from Earth. Yet for all their differences, they bled when injured, just like humans. They felt pain. They feared death, and Lisa had sworn an oath to heal all who needed her help, regardless of their planet of origin or the chemical basis of their biology. If the Galactic Court couldn't understand that priority, then perhaps they needed a reminder of what truly mattered in this vast, diverse universe they all shared. With that thought firmly in mind, Lisa settled into her seat and began reviewing the case details on her tablet as the shuttle carried her toward her date with Galactic Justice. The Galactic Court of Justice was an imposing structure floating in neutral space between Jupiter and Saturn, a massive crystalline sphere that housed representatives from over 200 species. Lisa's shuttle docked at precisely the appointed hour, and she was immediately escorted by 2 blue-skinned Arcturian bailiffs toward the main chamber. The journey had taken almost 5 hours, during which Lisa had monitored her patients remotely and received several updates from her medical team. All 3 Novaran miners were stable for now, though Engineer Krulvex had experienced 2 more crystal matrix fluctuations that required emergency stabilization procedures. The shuttle bay was enormous, filled with vessels of all shapes and sizes from across the galaxy. Lisa followed the Arcturian bailiffs, trying not to stare at the strange beings that passed them in the corridors. Some floated rather than walked, others moved on multiple legs, and a few seemed to shift their physical form as they moved. "First, time at the GCJ?" asked one of the bailiffs, noticing her wide eyes. "Yes," Lisa admitted. "I've never left the Jupiter system before." The bailiff nodded, his blue skin rippling slightly with the movement. "Most beings feel overwhelmed their first time here. 217 species currently have representation in the court. You'll likely see forms of life you never imagined existed." They turned a corner and entered a vast hallway lined with towering pillars that seemed to be made of light rather than solid matter. Between the pillars stood statues of beings from different worlds, each holding a symbol that Lisa assumed represented justice in their culture. The hospital's legal counsel, Howard Fields, waited at the entrance to the main chamber, his eyes widening when he saw her appearance. During the journey, he had changed into formal attire, a dark suit with the emblem of Earth's Medical Federation pinned to his lapel. "Lisa, you can't go in there like that," he hissed, gesturing at her scrubs. "I brought a formal suit for you. There's a changing room nearby. We still have 10 minutes before the hearing starts." "No time," Lisa replied, checking her medical tablet as it beeped with an alert. Engineer Krolvex's crystal matrix is showing signs of instability again. I need to monitor his vitals remotely during this hearing and get back as soon as possible. Howard looked horrified. The Galactic Court values decorum above all else. Judge Zixtar is notorious for his adherence to protocol. He once dismissed a case because an Andorian diplomat wore ceremonial colors from the wrong season. Then he'll understand the protocol of saving lives, Lisa replied firmly, pushing past him into the massive chamber. The room fell silent as she entered. It was even larger than she had imagined, a perfect sphere with platforms arranged in concentric circles, each holding representatives from different worlds. The lighting came from no visible source, yet illuminated every corner perfectly. The air was slightly cooler than human preference, a compromise temperature suitable for most oxygen-breathing species. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy turned to stare at the human woman in stained medical scrubs, a stark contrast to the formal attire worn by everyone else. Lisa felt suddenly self-conscious but straightened her back and kept walking. Her patients needed her to resolve this matter quickly so she could return to them. At the center of the chamber, a crystalline platform rose toward a towering bench, where Judge Zixtar, a 12-foot-tall, four-armed being with metallic skin and piercing green eyes, regarded her with obvious displeasure. Nurse Lisa Martinez, of Earth's Frontier Medical Station, announced an automated voice that seemed to come from the air itself, appearing to address allegations of discriminatory medical practices against Novaran citizens. Lisa stepped onto the designated platform, which began to rise, lifting her up to face the imposing judge. She could feel the disapproving stares from all around the chamber, particularly from the Novaran delegation whose crystalline bodies shimmered with obvious indignation. The Novaran representatives sat together on a platform to her right. Unlike the minors she treated, these were clearly diplomats or officials. Their crystal forms were more elaborate, with decorative patterns etched into their surfaces and small floating lights that orbited around them, some kind of status symbol, Lisa guessed. To her left sat a group of human officials from the Earth Medical Federation. They looked mortified by her appearance, several of them refusing to meet her eyes. Lisa recognized Dr. Eleanor Reed, the Federation's Director of Interspecies Medicine, who gave her a small nod despite her obvious concern. The platform stopped, rising when Lisa was at eye level with Judge Zixtar, whose metallic face reflected the chamber's light in shifting patterns. Up close, she could see that what had appeared to be skin was actually countless tiny scales, each moving slightly as if alive. The court acknowledges the presence of all representatives, Judge Zixtar said, his voice deep and resonant without the need for amplification. We gather today to address serious allegations brought forth by the Novaran Collective against the human medical establishment, specifically regarding quarantine protocols implemented during the Deneb system plague outbreak. The judge's forearms moved in complex patterns as he spoke, each hand gesturing independently to emphasize different points. His green eyes focused on Lisa with an intensity that made her feel as if he could see through her. Before we proceed to the formal complaint, he continued, this court must address a matter of immediate concern. The chamber grew even quieter if that was possible. Lisa felt her platform rotate slightly so that she faced the entire assembly. In the 9,000 years of this court's existence, Judge Zixtar said, his voice growing colder, no representative has shown such disregard for our proceedings as to appear in work attire stained with bodily fluids. Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but the judge raised one of his hands to silence her. Such appearance is not merely a breach of protocol. It is an insult to this assembly and to the serious nature of the allegations before us. From the Novaran platform, a taller crystal being rose slightly. If I may, Your Honor, this display of casual disregard reinforces our concern that humans do not take their obligations to non-human species seriously. Lisa recognized the voice pattern. This was Shurtal, the lead diplomat who had filed the original complaint about the quarantine procedures. The court recognizes Representative Shurtal of the Novaran Collective, Judge Zixtar acknowledged. Your observation is noted. Lisa's tablet beeped again, drawing disapproving murmurs from around the chamber. She glanced down quickly. Another alert about Krulvex. His crystal matrix was destabilizing again. She sent rapid instructions to the medical team back on the station. Nurse Martinez, the judge's voice boomed. You compound your disrespect by attending to other matters during these proceedings. Lisa looked up, meeting the judge's stern gaze. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but one of my patients, a Novaran minor injured in the Europa accident, requires emergency care. I am providing remote guidance to my medical team. This statement caused a stir among the Novaran delegation, with light patterns flickering rapidly between their crystalline forms, their method of private communication. Judge Zixtar's eyes narrowed. You claim to be remotely treating a Novaran patient while appearing at a hearing about alleged discrimination against Novarans. Explain yourself, Nurse Martinez, before this court issues its ruling on your conduct. Lisa took a deep breath, aware that everything she said next would be critically important, not just for her case, but for human-Novaran relations and the future of interspecies medical protocols throughout the galaxy. Judge Zixtar's voice resonated throughout the chamber, amplified by the perfect acoustics of the crystalline court. Nurse Martinez, you appear before this august body in work attire? The judge's tone conveyed more than mere disapproval. It was laden with disgust. Yes, Your Honor, Lisa replied, standing tall despite her exhaustion. She could feel the stares of hundreds of aliens focused on her, some curious, most disapproving. This court has existed for 9,000 years, the judge continued. In that time, no medical practitioner of any species has shown such disrespect as to appear before us in garments soiled with bodily fluids. The Novaran representative, Shurtal, rose from his seat. His crystalline body caught the light, sending rainbow reflections across the chamber. This demonstrates precisely our complaint. Judge, humans treat other species with casual disregard. The quarantine protocols this nurse implemented subjected our diplomats to humiliating procedures, while human dignitaries received preferential treatment. Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but Judge Zixtar raised a hand to silence her. The Piron complaint alleges that when the Novaran diplomatic vessel returned from the Deneb system 3 months ago, your medical station placed all 27 Novaran diplomats in Level 4 containment for 72 hours, the judge stated. Yet, the humans traveling on the same vessel were subjected only to Level 2 screening protocols. Is this correct? The protocols were different, yes, Your Honor, but... And you personally signed the order implementing these different standards? The judge's green eyes seemed to glow brighter. I did, Your Honor, because... Nurse Martinez, you will explain. Your disrespectful appearance before this court issues its ruling on the larger matter, the judge commanded, cutting her off again. Your failure to observe basic courtroom protocol does not inspire confidence in your professional judgment regarding interspecies medical procedures. The courtroom fell silent. Representatives from dozens of worlds watched intently. Lisa glanced. Down at her medical tablet, one of her patient's vitals was fluctuating dangerously. She tapped a quick instruction to the medical team back on the station before addressing the court. Your Honor, I appear before you in these scrubs not out of disrespect, but because 18 hours ago, a mining platform on Europa suffered a catastrophic breach. 43 miners, human, Arcturian, and yes, 3 Novarans, were brought to my medical station with critical injuries. She paused, making eye contact with the Novaran representative. I have been in surgery or emergency care without break since then. When your summons arrived giving me 6 hours to appear, I had a choice. Take time to change into formal attire, or continue stabilizing the injured, including the 3 Novaran miners whose silicon-based physiology requires specialized trauma, care that only 2 nurses in the Jupiter system are certified to provide. She held up her tablet. Even now I am monitoring their vital signs remotely. One of them, Engineer Krulvex, is fighting for his life. I chose to come as I am because every minute matters in trauma care. The Novaran delegation conferred among themselves, their bodies flashing with light patterns. Howard, Lisa's legal counsel, looked surprised but pleased at the reaction her words were having. Judge Zixtar's expression remained unreadable. You claim to be treating Novaran patients with the same care as humans, yet the complaint before us alleges precisely the opposite, that you implement discriminatory protocols based on species. The quarantine protocols were based on biological transmission vectors, Your Honor, not species, Lisa explained, grateful for the chance to finally address the actual complaint. The Novaran delegation arrived from the Deneb system, where they had diplomatic contact with the Morgellons. The Morgellons? Judge Zixtar leaned forward slightly, his interest clearly piqued. Yes, Your Honor. At that time, the Morgellons were carrying a pathogen deadly to silicon-based life forms. It cannot affect carbon-based life such as humans, but for Novarans it can cause catastrophic crystal matrix breakdown. The mortality rate is 97% once infected. Lisa swiped on her tablet and sent a data package to the court's system. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber showing molecular structures. This is the pathogen, she explained. It targets the specific atomic bonds in silicon-based life. It cannot survive in carbon-based bodies, which is why humans could not be carriers and needed only standard decontamination. But Novaran crystalline structures provide an ideal environment for the pathogen to replicate. The Novaran representative, Chertal, interrupted. Yet our own medical team found no evidence of this pathogen when they examined us after the quarantine period. Because the quarantine worked, Lisa replied. The level 4 containment included radiation treatment specifically, calibrated to destroy the pathogen without harming Novaran crystal matrices. The protocols were implemented to protect the Novaran diplomats, not to discriminate against them. Her tablet suddenly emitted a series of urgent beeps. Lisa's eyes widened as she checked the readings. The court chamber filled with murmurs at this interruption. Your Honor, I apologize, but Engineer Krolvex is going into crystal shock. I need to advise my team immediately on the proper stabilization procedure. Without waiting for permission, Lisa began rapidly typing instructions to her team. The courtroom erupted in murmurs of disapproval at this breach of protocol. Silence, thundered Judge Zixtar. Nurse Martinez, you dare to conduct medical business during these proceedings? Lisa looked up, her eyes flashing with determination despite her exhaustion. Yes, Your Honor, I dare. Because before I am a defendant in your court, I am a nurse, sworn to preserve life, all life, regardless of its chemical composition, planet of origin, or standing in the galactic community. The judge's metallic face showed the first hint of emotion, surprise. You would risk contempt of court to treat a Novaran minor. I would risk contempt of court to treat any patient who needs me, Lisa replied firmly. Just as I risked the disapproval of the Novaran diplomats by placing them in quarantine when I believed they might be carrying a deadly pathogen. She turned her tablet to face the judge, showing the critical vital signs of the Novaran minor. Engineer Krolvex's crystal matrix is showing signs of cascading failure. Without immediate intervention, the damage will be permanent. From the corner of her eye, Lisa noticed something unexpected. The Novaran diplomats were conferring again, but this time their light patterns were different, more urgent. One of them stood up. Your Honor, the new Novaran speaker said, I am Chief Medical Officer Vrext of the Novaran Collective. I request permission to examine the medical data Nurse Martinez is transmitting. Judge Zixtar considered for a moment, then nodded. Granted. A data link was established between Lisa's tablet and the Novaran medical officer's own device. The crystalline being studied the readings for several seconds, light patterns racing through his form. These readings are genuine, Vrex had announced. The human nurse is indeed treating a Novaran patient with severe matrix destabilization. And, he paused, seeming surprised. The treatment protocol she is implementing is advanced even by our standards. Lisa took advantage of the moment. Your Honor, the quarantine procedures I implemented 3 months ago were similarly based on the best available medical science, with one purpose only: to protect life, just as I am trying to do now. Judge Zixtar studied her for a long moment. This court will take a brief recess to allow Nurse Martinez to complete her emergency medical consultation. We will reconvene in 1 hour. As the judge rose to leave, Lisa quickly finished sending detailed instructions to her team. Looking up, she noticed that the Novaran medical officer, Vrext, was approaching her platform. "Your treatment protocol for crystal shock is unorthodox," he said, his voice translated by the court systems. "But the application of localized harmonic stabilization to prevent cascade failure is elegant. Where did you learn this technique?" "I developed it," Lisa replied simply. "After studying Novaran physiology for 3 years. Your people aren't the only silicon-based life forms in our medical care." The Novaran's lights pulsed in what Lisa recognized as surprise. "You created a new treatment protocol for a species not your own?" Lisa nodded, too tired to fully appreciate the significance of this conversation. "That's part of my job." When the court reconvened 1 hour later, the atmosphere had changed. The Novaran delegation sat in a different configuration, with Medical Officer Vrext now positioned prominently at the front. Lisa had used the break to check on all her patients, and was relieved to find that Engineer Krulvex had stabilized thanks to her team following her treatment protocol precisely. Judge Zixtar took his position, his forearms arranged in the formal posture of judicial authority. "This court will now continue its examination of the complaint brought by the Novaran Collective against Nurse Lisa Martinez and the Earth Medical Federation." The judge's green eyes focused on Lisa. "Nurse Martinez, you claim the quarantine protocols you implemented were medically necessary, rather than discriminatory. Yet we must address why similar protocols were not part of standard procedure before the incident in question." Lisa nodded, feeling more confident now that she had been able to help stabilize her patient. "Your Honor, interspecies medicine is still developing. The pathogen I mentioned, the one carried by the Morgellons, was only identified 6 months before the diplomatic mission returned. My station received the alert just 2 weeks prior to the Novaran delegation's arrival." She brought up new data on the court's holographic display. "This shows the spread of the pathogen through 3 Novaran settlements in the Deneb system. Over 300 Novarans died before containment was achieved." The chamber was silent as the representatives viewed the data. The images of Novaran crystal bodies turning dull and then crumbling were disturbing. "When we received word that the diplomatic vessel was returning from that exact region, I immediately researched the pathogen and developed the quarantine protocol," Lisa continued. "There simply wasn't time to go through the normal channels for approval." Chertal, the lead Novaran complainant, spoke up. "Yet you failed to explain the full reasons for the quarantine to our diplomats. They were simply detained and subjected to procedures they did not understand." Lisa looked down for a moment, acknowledging the point. "You're right. In the rush to implement the protective measures, communication was inadequate. That was my failure, and I apologize for it." This directed mission seemed to surprise many in the chamber, including the judge. "However," Lisa continued, "I had to make a choice between acting quickly with imperfect communication or waiting for formal approval while potentially exposing your diplomats to a deadly pathogen. I chose to act quickly to protect lives." Novaran, Medical Officer Vrexteed, stepped forward. "Your Honor, if I may address the court?" At the judge's nod, Vrexit continued. "During the recess, I reviewed the complete medical data from both the quarantine incident and the current emergency treatment of our minors. The evidence suggests that Nurse Martinez's actions, while perhaps lacking in diplomatic courtesy, were medically sound and likely saved lives." Murmurs spread through the chamber at this unexpected support from a Novaran official. Judge Zixtar leaned forward. "Medical Officer Vrexit, are you suggesting the Novaran Collective wishes to withdraw its complaint?" Before Vrexit could answer, Chertal interrupted. "We do not withdraw our complaint about the manner of implementation. However, we acknowledge that the medical basis for the quarantine appears legitimate." The judge turned his attention back to Lisa. "Nurse Martinez, this court must still address your conduct today. Your appearance and your interruptions of these proceedings for medical consultations remain serious breaches of protocol." Lisa's tablet beeped again, but more softly this time. She glanced down quickly and saw that Engineer Krulvex's vital signs were improving steadily. "Your Honor," she said, looking back up at the towering judge, In my 18 years as a trauma nurse, I have treated beings from 37 different species. I have held the dying in my arms, human and alien alike. These scrubs bear the marks of that service. She gestured to the stains on her uniform. This is Arcturian hemolymph from when I performed manual cardiac stimulation for 20 minutes. These blue marks are Centauran cooling fluid that splashed when I inserted an emergency thermal regulator. And this, she pointed to a crystalline residue, is Novaran structural fluid from Engineer Krolvex, who grabbed my arm in gratitude after I stabilized his shattered matrix. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, carrying throughout the chamber without the need for amplification. I stand before you in these scrubs because they are not a mark of disrespect. They are a badge of honor, bearing witness to my commitment to preserving life throughout this galaxy. She took a step forward on her platform. The oath I took as a nurse doesn't distinguish between species. It doesn't say, first, do no harm, unless you're too busy with court appearances to provide care. It doesn't say preserve life, but only when it's convenient or diplomatic to do so. Lisa gestured toward her tablet. While we've been in this chamber debating protocols and procedures, I've been remotely guiding my team in saving the life of a Novaran miner. If that commitment offends this court's sense of decorum, then perhaps the court should reconsider its priorities. Complete silence fell over the chamber. Even Howard, her legal counsel, seemed stunned by her boldness. Judge Zixtar remained motionless, his forearms perfectly still, as he regarded the human nurse. For a long moment, no one in the entire chamber moved or spoke. Then, something unexpected happened. From the Novaran delegation came a sound, a high, clear tone that resonated through the crystalline chamber. One of the Novarans had struck his own body, producing a bell-like sound that was the Novaran equivalent of applause. The sound was joined by another, then another, until the entire Novaran delegation was creating a harmonious chime that filled the chamber with beautiful, ringing tones. Medical Officer Vrexit stepped forward again. Your Honor, a moment, please. He turned to face Lisa directly. Nurse Martinez, during our recess, I contacted our homeworld. The 3 Novaran miners being treated at your frontier medical station have families who have been receiving regular updates from your medical team. The crystalline being structure shifted to produce a different light pattern, a sign of emotional shift among his kind. They spoke of compassionate care, of human nurses who worked tirelessly to learn the specific needs of silicon-based life, of treatment rooms specially modified to accommodate crystal bodies. Frexty turned to address Judge Zixtar. Your Honor, I have also reviewed the quarantine protocols in question and consulted with our own xenobiologists. The evidence suggests the protocols were indeed scientifically sound and implemented with the protection of Novaran life as their primary goal. A murmur rippled through the court as Vrexit did something unprecedented. He bent his crystalline form in a gesture approximating a human bow of respect toward Lisa. On behalf of the Novaran Medical Council, I formally acknowledge that Nurse Martinez's actions were taken in the interest of preserving Novaran lives. While we may suggest improvements in communication for future protocols, we find no evidence of discriminatory intent. Shurtal, the original complainant, seemed less convinced. The manner of implementation remains problematic. Our diplomats were not treated with appropriate respect. Perhaps, Frexit acknowledged, but neither was their health disregarded. In matters of life and death, I believe even our diplomats would agree that survival takes precedence over diplomatic niceties. Judge Zixtar raised a hand for silence. This court has heard sufficient testimony to render a decision. His metallic face turned toward Lisa. Nurse Martinez, your dedication to your patients is evident. However, this court must still address the matter of the protocols themselves. Lisa's tablet beeped once more. She checked it and smiled with relief. Engineer Krolvex was now fully stabilized. The crisis had passed. She looked up at the judge, ready to hear his verdict, whatever it might be. A profound silence fell over the courtroom. Judge Zixtar remained motionless, his forearms perfectly still as he regarded the human nurse. The Novaran delegation conferred among themselves, their crystalline bodies reflecting light in rapid patterns their equivalent of intense conversation. After what seemed an eternity, Judge Zixtar spoke. In my 2 centuries presiding over this court, I have prioritized decorum and protocol, believing them to be the foundation of civilized interaction between species. His voice echoed through the chamber, reaching every corner. The judge's metallic features shifted subtly. Today you have reminded this court that there are higher principles. Your dedication to preserving life regardless of its origin exemplifies the highest ideals of galactic cooperation. Lisa stood straight, despite her exhaustion, surprised by the judge's words. However, the judge continued, the complaint before us concerns specific protocols and their implementation. Before rendering my decision, I will hear final statements from both parties. The lead Novaran representative, Shirtal, rose. Your Honor, while we acknowledge Nurse Martinez's medical expertise and her current care of our injured miners, we maintain that the initial quarantine procedures were implemented without proper explanation or diplomatic courtesy. We ask the Court to establish clear guidelines for future interspecies medical protocols to prevent similar incidents. Howard Fields, Lisa's legal counsel, stood next. Your Honor, Nurse Martinez acted swiftly to protect Novaran lives based on the best available medical information. While communication could have been improved, her actions were motivated solely by concern for the well-being of all patients under her care, regardless of species. Judge Zixtar nodded. I have heard sufficient arguments. The judge stood, towering above the assembly. This case presents a unique challenge, balancing diplomatic protocol against medical necessity in emergency situations. The entire chamber waited in tense silence. It is the finding of this court that the quarantine protocols implemented by Nurse Lisa Martinez were medically justified and not discriminatory in intent, the judge announced. However, the court also recognizes that the manner of implementation lacked sufficient explanation and sensitivity to diplomatic concerns. Lisa felt both vindicated and chastened. The judge was right. She could have handled the communication better. Therefore, Judge Zixtar continued, this case is dismissed with the following conditions. First, the Earth Medical Federation will work with the Novaran Medical Council to establish clear guidelines for interspecies emergency protocols. Second, all such protocols will include provisions for clear communication and explanation, even in emergency situations. The judge turned to look directly at Lisa. And finally, this court recommends that the Galactic Medical Association study the emergency protocols developed by Nurse Martinez for possible implementation throughout the Federation. Her approach to interspecies medicine shows promise for improving care across our diverse community. As Lisa exhaled in relief, something unprecedented occurred. Judge Zixtar placed all 4 of his hands on his bench and inclined his head toward her, the highest form of respect in his culture. This court stands in recognition of medical dedication that transcends species boundaries, the judge stated formally. One by one, representatives throughout the chamber stood. The gesture spread like a wave. Arcturians, Centaurans, Rigelians, and dozens of other species, all rising to acknowledge the human nurse in her stained scrubs. Howard Fields, the hospital's legal counsel, stared in amazement. In 9,000 years of the Galactic Court, this has never happened, he whispered to Lisa. From the Novaran delegation, Medical Officer Vrexit approached Lisa's platform. His crystalline body glowed with inner light as he addressed her. Nurse Martinez, on behalf of the Novaran Collective, I extend an invitation. We would welcome your expertise in helping establish the new interspecies medical protocols mentioned by the court. Your understanding of silicon-based life forms is exceptional for a human. Lisa smiled tiredly. I would be honored, Medical Officer Vrext, but first I need to return to my patients. Her tablet beeped once more. She checked it and smiled with relief. Engineer Krulvex is stable. His crystal matrix is showing signs of proper integration with the new support structure. Vrexit's body pulsed with light. Your treatment innovations are remarkable. The harmonic resonance therapy you developed for crystal stabilization could save many Novaran lives in the future. From across the chamber, Shirtal, who had led the complaint against Lisa, approached slowly. His crystalline form was more rigid than Vrexti's, his light patterns more controlled. "Nurse Martinez," he began formally, "while I maintain that our diplomatic corps deserved better communication, I acknowledge that your intentions were honorable. The Novaron Diplomatic Service withdraws its objection to your continued role in interspecies medicine." Lisa nodded in acceptance of this partial apology. "Thank you, Representative Jurtal. In return, I promise to work on improving my communication when implementing emergency protocols in the future." This exchange seemed to satisfy the remaining tension in the room. Judge Zixtar struck a crystal gavel, sending a clear tone throughout the chamber. "This matter is resolved. This court is adjourned." As representatives began to file out of the chamber, Howard approached Lisa, shaking his head in wonder. "Do you realize what just happened? You've established a legal precedent that will affect interspecies medicine for centuries." Lisa checked her tablet one more time. "Right now, I'm more concerned with the next 12 hours. I need to get back to my patients." A court official approached them. "Nurse Martinez, we have arranged for an emergency transport vessel to return you to Frontier Medical Station. It can depart immediately and will reach the station in half the time of a standard shuttle." "Thank you," Lisa said, surprised by this courtesy. As she prepared to leave, Medical Officer Vrext approached once more. "One moment, Nurse Martinez. I have been communicating with your medical team during these proceedings. They have implemented your crystal stabilization protocol on all 3 Novaron patients with excellent results." Vrextiti's body pulsed with what Lisa now recognized as genuine respect. "I have transmitted full details of your treatment innovations to our homeworld. Our medical council wishes to name the procedure after you, the Martinez method of crystal stabilization. This is a rare honor for a non-Novaron." Lisa felt a flush of pride despite her exhaustion. "I'm just glad it's helping your people." "It will help many more," Vrexit assured her. "Sometimes the greatest advances come from seeing beyond our differences, to recognize our common needs." As Lisa boarded the transport vessel, she was surprised to find Judge Zixtar waiting near the departure bay. The imposing judge lowered himself slightly to meet her at eye level. "Nurse Martinez, this court has existed for 9 millennia, the judge said quietly. "In that time, we have established countless precedents and protocols. But today, you reminded us of something essential that spans all our different biologies, the fundamental value of life itself." The judge's metallic face shifted in what Lisa now recognized as his species' version of a smile. "Go tend to your patients, nurse. The galaxy is better for having healers like you." The transport vessel detached from the court and accelerated toward Jupiter. As the stars streaked past the viewport, Lisa finally allowed herself to relax. She had stood her ground in the highest court in the galaxy, defended her principles, and won not just a legal victory, but recognition for her work. Her tablet beeped again, but this time it wasn't an emergency alert. It was a message from Engineer Krolvex, the Novaron miner whose life she had helped save during the court proceedings. The translated text was simple. "Thank you, Nurse Martinez. My crystal sings because of you." Lisa smiled, leaning back in her seat. This was why she had become a nurse, not for glory or recognition, but for moments like this. As the ship raced toward Jupiter and her waiting patients, she closed her eyes briefly, already planning the improvements she would make to her treatment protocols when she returned. The galaxy was vast and filled with countless different forms of life, but the desire to heal and be healed was universal. In her stained scrubs heading back to her medical station, Lisa Martinez had never felt more certain of her place in that galaxy.